بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إن من خياركم أحسنكم أخلاقا متفق عليه. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned that from the best of you, the best of you are those who are best in their akhlaq and their character. And as I mentioned before in our initial introduction, the character of a Muslim or the mannerisms of a Muslim is twofold. It does not become perfect in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam except with following the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, internally purifying oneself, and then afterwards externally reflecting what is beautiful about that person that is inside. And that's very important for us to understand, because a person cannot become a true believer except that he is following all of the Islamic understandings of what is good mannerism. And that's why you can't consider yourself morally upright except with the whole package. The whole package must be there for a person to be considered morally upright in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. There are many ahadith like this. And yesterday we started a discussion and we were talking about there are two main forces that drive a person. So we have the nafs and we have the soul, or we have the, as you would say, the essence of that person. And as I mentioned yesterday, the essence of a person is not just his body, because the body is just an envelope or what secures the soul. And the soul is actually in itself everlasting, and meaning it will go into barzakh, and after barzakh it will go into back into the body and on the day of judgment. So the body itself will be changed. For example, when we go into Jannah, when we are risen up on the day of judgment, and then when inshallah when all of us enter into Jannah, the body itself will be something that will be changed. So the body itself is not the real essence of who we are, but it's our soul and it's our actual essence and our nafs. So this is very important for us to understand, because then we'll be able to treat our nafs and our soul separately and do those things that it requires, because that itself has a maintenance process. It needs ghiza, it needs food, for example. It needs medicine sometimes. It needs dawa. Sometimes it needs a little bit of exercising. And that's why the month of Ramadan has a very interesting inner reality and an inner depth that changes our soul, our nafs, and it's supposed to have a full metaphysical change to who we are and our realities in life. So this is what fasting will do. So that part of it, the soul part of it, is very important to understand, to make sure that we are doing those things and those actions that will better our soul. And then we have the jism, or the body that we have, and the body that soul is enveloped in. And the body will have requirements as well. So the body has needs, and has physical needs. For example, it needs food, it needs exercise, it needs rest, and all of the things. What happens in the chaos of the world that we live in, we focus a lot on our body, and we are not mindful of our soul. We are not mindful of the reality of the existing life of the soul, and how that will be extracted from our body when we die. So this is really important to understand, and that's why we started to talk about it yesterday. And yesterday I mentioned there's two forces that drives the soul and the nafs. And the nafs itself and the soul is somewhat interlinked, and it's one in itself, the soul and the nafs. And that itself has different dimensions that it goes through. It's just like, for example, we have the baby stage, we have the adult stage, we have the mature stage, we have sometimes cravings from one side, cravings from the other side. The two forces that drives that whole system is what you call quwwat ghadabiyya, or quwwat jah, the jah of a person. And then the second one is what you call quwwat ba, or the quwwat shahwiya. So these two forces, and I said one of them, the first one is that kuwa, or the protection of a person, that is driven by his anger and his protection, his desire for protection. And protection would be sometimes survival, sometimes his honor, sometimes his family's honor, sometimes and I'll talk about more of what is derived from that kuwa and that strength. And then we have the second strength that we have within ourselves, which is the one of shahwiya, or the ba. That's driven by desires, what we need, what we're feeling for, what we're feeling to eat, what we're feeling, what type of carnal desires you have, what is sometimes intriguing you. So all of those things are on that. And when those things are in harmony, when they're in i'tidal, when they're in moderation, then everything works. And this is what you call nafs mutma'inna, or the soul that has come to a complete harmony. And that soul will enter into Jannah. Now, when these two forces itself is in harmony and it's in moderation, then the mind can think properly. Your akal and your intelligence, it does the right actions. And that's why it's important to have these two forces in its complete moderation, and away from any type of extremes. Now, when you start going in any type of extreme, then you start doing wrong actions. And that's why, for example, in the kuwa, or the protective instinct that a person will have to protect himself, and trust me, these things, these two forces, they're beneficial for us. They're things that we need. They're forces that we require for existence. So sometimes, for example, think about any sin that you can think about. For example, arrogance that you have, kibr that you have, pride. If you have the sin of, for example, you have the sin of hatred, you have the sin of, so these are all inner related sins within the soul and the nafs of a person. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions in the Quran, He says, وَذَرُوا ظَاهِرَ الْإِثْمَ وَبَاطِنَ, that remove, take away, rid the sins that is within, the apparent sins, the sins that you can see. For example, the sins that is like drinking alcohol, or womanizing, or doing something like, for example, eating haram food, or any action that you can see that is zahir, that is apparent. It's known that you're doing something wrong, and people can recognize that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying in the Quran, take away those sins that are apparent, and take away those that are hidden as well. وَبَاطِنَ, and those sins that are hidden and that is done in secrecy or within the nafs itself, and it's not done outwardly. Because if a person has arrogance, for example, or he has self-conceit, or he has love of fame and love of self, and all of these kind of sins, how can you see that? It's something that is internal. So those things come about when there is not moderation. There's extremism now in how a person requires or needs to fulfill that want or that desire. So, for example, if you overuse, or you come out of moderation with the quwwa and the level of protection, then you will want to protect your fame. You will start looking for fame, for example, or you'll start looking for your pomp, or you'll start wanting to, for example, you'll be very vain, or you might end up doing something like you're full of your ego, you're full of arrogance. So these are all sins, but a lot of times people don't even realize that they're committing a sin because they're engrossed in it, because this strength that they have is overpowering them. And then when you have sometimes the sins of doing something wrong, for example, you have carnal desires and you're having illicit relationships, and you cannot see that because your mind is fogged now. Because, as I said, when these two forces are not in moderation, your mind cannot think correctly, because you have lost that understanding and that intelligence to understand what is right and wrong. Or you might understand it, but because of that internal desires, it drives you towards the wrong actions. So that's why it's very important to get that moderation with these types of things. And the whole topic that we're actually trying to discuss here is Islamic manners. And Islamic manners, the core of it comes from these two: understanding your soul, and also now then applying what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam has explained as what is good character, what is mannerisms, what is your moral code, what is your social standing, what is the actions that you considered upright, or what does society, for example, consider upright? Is it upright in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or is it something that is blameworthy in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So to understand this, this is where Islam comes about, and that's the beauty of Islam. Subhanallah. Inna hadha al-Quran yahdi lillati hiya aqwam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this Quran, the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it guides to what which is aqwam, which is upright, which is the most appropriate position to have. This is what the Quran does to a person, and that's the beauty of the Quran. The beauty of the Quran is it takes a person to that moderation of life, of existence, and it puts him into exact pathway or exact level and considerations that he has to have. This is what the Quran does. It's beautiful. And this is the month of the Quran, so I'll just put that as a side note, something that we should all connect to. And this is a time where we have a little bit more opportunity to do that. So sit down in a family, for example, read some Quran, try to reflect on the meanings of the Quran, and do it with that intention that, oh Allah, this is your words. I want you to guide me to those verses. I want you to guide me to that direction that I'm looking for. You will see the Quran starts talking back to you. Anything that you wish for and you're looking for an answer, talk to the Quran, read the Quran. You'll see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers you through the Quran. So you do read the Quran as well with the intention also of dua. You make intention that, oh Allah, I am asking you through the intercession of the Quran, or through invoking, not intercession, through invoking the Quran, the words that you have revealed, or your words and your speech, I invoke you. So invoke through the dua that you'll be making through the Quran. So this is one of the intentions you can do when you're reading Quran. You will see, subhanallah, you will see the Quran actually speaking back to you, and you'll be getting answers that you'll be searching for. And this is a miracle of the Quran. So when you have that understanding whilst reading Quran, you'll see the Quran actually talks back to you, and you'll get clearer picture of reality of your life and your existence, and many of the things that you'll be looking to do. So this is one of the things that we should do with the other intentions that you have whilst reading Quran. Things like, for example, you should have intentions of reward, of following the sunnah of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of following the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so on and so forth. Inshallah, we'll talk about that in the session of the mannerisms that we have with the Quran. So I'm coming close to the end of this particular topic, because one of the things I wanted to talk about, I started talking about yesterday, is the akhlaq and the mannerisms that you have with yourself is important. And that's why I said it's important to work on who you are and your soul itself. And that's why I differentiated the body and the soul itself. So there are two things, and you have to understand that there are two things, and they're separated, although they live simultaneously, and they interact one into the other. But reality is that there are actually two things, and you have to understand that, because once you understand your reality, then you can work on it. So if you can work on our own souls and the food that the souls require, the medicine that the souls require, then we'll think about the whole concept differently. We won't just think about it as this is our bodily existence, but the soul existence is completely different as well. So in order to get good mannerisms, we have to work on self. And when you work on self, you will be able to, inshallah, perfect your mannerisms outwardly with the other than yourself, with the other people. And that's what, inshallah, we'll go on to tomorrow. So there's three topics I'll be discussing every day, inshallah. The first one we started with, and I'll be interchanging them, one, then the other, then the other. The first one will be the akhlaq with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and those things associated with Allah and religion. The second thing I'll be talking about every single day, every third day, is the akhlaq and the mannerisms with self. That will include your inner cleanliness, your tazkiyah, your purity of actions and will, and your demeanor that you should have inside. And the third thing I'll be talking about, which I'll start tomorrow, inshallah, is the akhlaq and the mannerisms that you have with other than yourself. So you have mannerisms, Islamic mannerisms with other people, and that has a whole range of people and a whole range of topics, inshallah, that you will be discussing, inshallah. So akhlaq and your character, who you are, and the way that you interact with people in itself is very important. And that's part of you being a Muslim. And as I mentioned, Muslim means that you have the whole package. It does not mean that you take some of it and you remove some of it. It just does not work like that. A person cannot say that he will be only some part way or halfway a Muslim, and then he refuses to accept the other parts of being a Muslim. Now, I just do a little introduction about tomorrow's topic, which is our mannerisms with other than ourselves. Our mannerisms with, our wives, for example, our spouses, our children, our neighbors, our mannerisms with the people that we sit close by with, the people that we travel with in the car, the people that we interact with, the authorities that we have to interact with, the different people that come across our lives. So that's really important. You know why? Because that's part of being a Muslim as well. There is a guidance there. In fact, the Quran talks about wasahibul jambi wa ibn sabil, talks about how you interact with, again, the person that you're sitting with in a travel. For example, you're traveling from Port of Spain to San Fernando. The person you're sitting with, there's a etiquette and there's a mannerism that you have to have with that person. Wasahibul jamb, the person who's just next to you. Wabina Sabil, and the person who's actually traveling with you, that you're both a companion of each other whilst going from one place to the other. So these are some of the things that you have to consider as being a Muslim. And without considering it, you have actually left out a whole part of your Islam and your being a Muslim. In a hadith mentioned by Abu Darda radiallahu anhu, he says, "Ma min shay'in athqalu fi mizan al-abd al-mu'min yawm al-qiyamah min husn al-khuluq." That there would be nothing that is more weightier on the scales on the day of judgment for a believing servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than his good akhlaq and his good character. And that's why when I talk about character, when I talk about mannerisms, I always talk about there's going to be a twofold and a threefold part of it. You have to understand the three parts. One is with Allah, and that's with regard to all of the commands, all of the ibadah, all of the different things that is associated with Allah and His Rasul and the Messenger and the Deen and everything else. The second part of it is your inner akhlaq and your inner mannerisms, your inner character. And if that is not pure, then you can't actually do the other two. You have to have the inner part pure as well, and that's something that we thrive for. And that's why I mentioned Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of his rules was to ensure that that inner soul that is there, that is pure. And that's where we have a lot of people who just don't hear about that, or they just miss it altogether. And that's why I'm trying to highlight the reality of your soul. The soul is an existence which requires a certain amount of attention, and we have to give that attention. And the other part of your akhlaq and your Islamic mannerisms is the way that we deal with other people, the way that we talk with other people, the way that we discuss things, the way that we have differences of opinion, the way that we interact all together. So it's a threefold process, and you have to go through each one of them. Without doing all three of them, you would not be able to fully understand and fully become that true social upright Muslim. And we need to understand that as best as possible. In my conclusion, I'll just talk about one of the hadith of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is why part of the inner purification that the person goes through, he has to ensure that he is bringing in the tahseen of the akhlaq. You have to beautify your character, and character in all of the different levels, but you have to beautify it as well. So beautification is something that we understand. So for example, you have a hall, like you have the masjid here, and in the masjid, you can just leave it completely blank without any type of moldings, without any type of curtains, without any type of decorations and anything at all that gives that pop or makes that inviting and nice. Take out all the carpet, no fancy, nothing at all, right? And you leave it bare, then what happens? It's not as inviting, it's not as nice. The ambience does not appeal to you in any way. So we understand what's tahseen because we do that for ourselves. Sometimes we want to feel that we're looking good, or sometimes we want to feel that we are, appropriately dressed, or we feel that, what, I have to look neat and crisp, or I feel that there's a certain time or a certain occasion that I need to feel confident about myself. And that reflects sometimes in the way that we approach bettering or tahseen, beautification of oneself. So many reasons that causes that. But the second part of tahseen, after tahseen is one part, beautification is one part. The second part of it is getting rid of the evil, getting rid of the bad. Imagine you're beautifying a place and you're making it nice, and ambience is just remarkable. It's just stunning. But then you have a very foul smell coming out of that place, and it's really dirty. And it just, it's a scent that you can't bear. Now, no matter how beautiful the place is looking, because of that foul scent that is coming out, it will always give out a bad scent, and it will always run a person from that beautiful place. So that's why it's important to rid any type of evil and any type of foul inequalities within a person and remove it, because it's a twofold process. You can't beautify a place and leave it really dirty and nasty and expect that its ambience is going to be nice or it's going to be inviting. You have to remove the dirt, you have to remove that thing that is clustering, that is making the place not nice, and thereafter you put in the beautification. So it's a twofold process in everything that we're doing. And that's why Islam teaches us. And in fact, the ulama of the zuhad and tasawwuf and tazkiyah, the ulama and the people who are experts in acquiring that purity of soul, they always give that example and the importance of bringing in what you call tahliya, beautification, and takhliya, removing. Tahliya and takhliya, tahliya and takhliya. So you're beautifying something, and then at the same time you're removing the evil of it. Then that person or that soul becomes what you call mutma'inna. So that's part of our Islamic mannerisms, and something that we have to understand. We have to, search for it, understand it, go by those people who have a better understanding, learn about it. And that's the only way we will actually become that, what do you call, nafsun mutma'inna, or that soul that has come to its complete moderation, and one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is happy with, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to call and enter into Jannah. And this is many of the beautiful things that we hear about a good person and a good soul, and what you call the salihin, or the pious people. So one of the things that we will continue doing throughout this month is talking about how to better ourselves and take away the razail, take away the evil within, beautify ourselves, and put in the beautiful tenets of faith, the beautiful actions of within, and the beautiful adab and the outer depiction of what is inside. And it's again a threefold process. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He talks about the importance of your akhlaq in many different places. And all of these things that I've discussed has been discussed in the Quran. For example, in the 30th part, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ تَزَكَّى وَذَكَرَ اسْمَ رَبِّهِ فَصَلَّى. So قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ تَزَكَّى. So قَدْ أَفْلَحَ, that person is successful who does tazkiyah. And tazkiyah is that purification. So the purification process is something that we have to go through, and something that we have to understand. And when we do that, inshallah, we will be what you call, from the salihin, from the pious people, from the people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mercy upon. It's the actual quality of a person. It's the actual stage that we get when we keep working on ourselves. And this is where we want to thrive to become, inshallah. I'll just I'll just mention one more hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It says that husnul khulki hasanatun la tadurru ma'aha kathratu sayyi'at wa su'ul khulq sayyi'atun la tanfa'u ma'aha kathratul hasanat. And that's the equilibrium that we want. We want to get that level of 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 um, of moderation. This is a quote, is a saying by Yahya ibn Mu'az rahimahullah. He says, Husnul khulq, the beautification of your character, is a good thing, such a good thing that la tadhuru ma'aha kathratu sayyat. It actually would not be affected much by making mistakes, by doing a sin. By committing a sin, it will not actually take away the reality of who you are and the purification of your soul that you've gone through and your adab and your mannerisms that you're actually displaying. And he says at the same time though, with having that you have worked so much on yourself, when you make a mistake and you do a sayyat, when you do a sin, it's not going to affect you too much because you bounce back. And that's one of the qualities of a muttaqi, a pious person, a person who is God conscious. He makes mistakes. That's a misconception that we have, that a pious person does not make mistakes. Yes, he will make mistakes, but right after that mistakes, you quickly, repent. You quickly cleanse yourself from that mistake, and you turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what the quality of a muttaqi. He will, after making mistakes, he turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala right away. And Yahya ibn Mu'adh, he's saying that وَسُوءُ الْخُلْقِ سَيِّئَةٌ, and having a bad character, it's actually a sin as well. لا ينفع معها كثرة الحسنات. And that's the beauty of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm always amazed by the statements of our Salaf al-Salihin, our pious predecessors. He's saying that your bad character, it's also a sin. لا تنفع معها, that it does not actually benefit him or benefit his anything that he's doing and his character in any way with many good deeds. So you're doing all this ibadah and you're doing all of these actions. If you have a bad character and you don't have good Islamic mannerisms, then it's not going to benefit you anyway. And then when you have all of the good character, that's a good deed and you will be rewarded as well. But all of the bad things that you might have happening to you, or some mistakes that you would have, it does not actually affect your good character. So that's why it's double fold. There's twofold that you have to always be working on. You have to actually beautify yourself and take away the evil within a person, and inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us the beautification of ourselves. And one of the statements of Hassan al-Basri rahimahullah, he mentions, Man sa'a khuluquhu adhaba nafsahu, that person who actually does not work on his own akhlaq, his mannerisms, and all of the things, the different categories that I've been talking about, then he's actually punishing his own soul. And that's why we go back to the soul, inshallah, and we try to work on the soul, recognize the soul, recognize the importance of the soul, recognize how much that we have to actually work on it, exercise it, give it the essentials that is required. And inshallah, when we do that, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow us to benefit ourselves first, and inshallah benefit others. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the understanding, inshallah. This is the month of Ramadan, and this is the month that we actually work on these types of thoughts, to be able to use the blessings of the month of Ramadan, the blessings of the Quran around us, the blessings of the ambience, to be able to incorporate and inculcate really good actions, really good habits, really good behaviors, purify our souls, and inshallah rid ourselves of all of the evil within. So we continue making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Oh Allah, we ask you for protection from the evil of ourselves. And we ask you, and this is from the du'as of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to not leave us, adrift of our own souls and our own desires, but hold fast to us and guide us and continue guiding us to the straight path. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept us all, inshallah. Do share these, inshallah, videos as well, so others can benefit, and inshallah it'll be a sadaqah jariyah for yourself. And also do like the pages as well, and both on Facebook and YouTube, inshallah. That'll be a benefit for yourselves and others as well. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept us all and all of the efforts that we are making in this month of Ramadan. Wal akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.